How do you think society perceives survivors of sexual harassment? Survivors who speak up about their harassment or stand up to their harassers are lauded by society for being courageous, and rightly so. But what about those who don't speak up? What percentage of survivors do you think they make up? Researchers at the University of Amherst, Massachusetts, analyzed all sexual harassment complaints filed in the United States between 2012 and 2016. They found that nearly 99.8% of people who experience sexual harassment in the workplace never filed formal charges. In India, a nationwide online survey conducted in 2018 by the local circles comprising 15,000 participants found that same number to be 78%. So, what are the reasons why many survivors choose to passively respond to their situation instead of taking a confrontational approach? And how does society view passive survivors who never choose to fight back against the harassers? We learned last time that an observer's individual personalities could come in their way of perceiving sexual harassment. In this video, we shall discuss how a survivor's passiveness may affect that perception and why do survivors react passively at all. Many people may think that they would act in a morally agreeable manner, but research shows that humans don't have a good track record of predicting their own behavior. In the context of sexual harassment in the workplace, research using hypothetical harassment situations has found that survivors believe they would report or confront the harasser, whereas evidence suggests that in actual sexual harassment cases, survivors tend not to do so. You can watch our video on effective forecasting errors to find out more about why we are bad at predicting our own behaviors. Now, it does still seem odd that a person would choose to respond passively, given the psychological harm, violation of trust, possible physical, or even financial harm in some situations. Passiveness is also unlikely to stop harassers. Then why is it such a common reaction? By the end of this video, you'll hopefully be able to understand why most survivors choose passivity as a response to harassment, despite how counterproductive it may seem. However, to begin with, let's try to answer what do passive responses even look like. So, survivors often normalize the situation and downplay the harassment. In certain situations, they ignore the harassment because they feel powerless. These passive responses are self focused coping strategies. This means that rather than putting an end to the harassment, the target places a greater emphasis on their psychological well being. However, while the personality and mental health of the target does play a role in how they'll respond, these responses can be greatly affected by uncontrollable contextual factors. Maybe the first time the target faced such harassing behavior, they actually did file a complaint. But far from supporting them and reprimanding the harasser, the organization preferred to take almost no action, given the high profile status of the harasser and consequences for the company. It is not unusual that several organizations do not view certain evidently inappropriate behavior as sexual harassment. Though the target is visibly uncomfortable, societal norms may lead them to take an ambiguous view of the sexually harassing behavior. The harasser may also threaten the target with retaliation, especially if they are in a powerful position in the organization. The organizational climate towards sexual harassment is extremely important in determining not only the instances of sexual harassment reporting, but also its outcomes to sexual harassment history. However, in organizations where sexual harassment is prevalent and there is a threat of retaliation, reporting sexual harassment can cause great psychological harm and distress to the target. The same study that we mentioned earlier found that survivors have indeed faced punitive action taken against them for filing formal charges. There have been countless allegations of employer retaliation and transfer of jobs that have been associated with filing formal sexual harassment charges. In light of these points, adopting passive strategies can indeed be seen as reasonable coping strategies. Leaving the job or applying for a transfer could be effective in putting an end to harassment while avoiding confrontation and conflict. Most survivors indeed choose to change their own routines or even move cities rather than confront their harassers. But is this a solution? Survivors having to quit their job is indicative of a failure on the part of society. A survivor's psychological, emotional, and physical well being, as well as their self image and their reputation, is also often at stake, which makes it even more difficult for them to take action against the harasser. Furthermore, for many survivors, their jobs are the single most important source of financial support for themselves and their families. Achieving these goals while trying to stop the harasser could be extremely difficult. Sexual harassment evokes many negative and stressful emotions in an individual, which makes them feel that it is easier to avoid than to confront the harasser. A passive response provides the target with a sense of agency that lets them manage the situation without disrupting many aspects of their lives. Since passive responses are multifaceted, on the surface they can be difficult to understand. Do we actively expect survivors to confront their harassers and judge them harshly if they do not? Does shedding light on the pressures faced by sexual harassment survivors have any effect on observer evaluation of passive survivors? Research and observer evaluation of passive survivors shows that our expectation from a survivor to confront their harasser and condemnation if they fail to do so can possibly be attributed to poor forecasting. One of the reasons for poor forecasting is that people fail to take into account the pressures they might face in the actual situation. Researchers conducted an experiment to demonstrate this phenomena better. Participants in the study were presented with the scenario of a candidate in an interview responding passively by answering sexually harassing questions asked during the course of the interview. The participants were asked how they would have responded in the same situation. 83% of the candidates predicted that they would confront the interviewer more than the candidate. Only 17% predicted they would behave as the candidate did. However, as we said earlier, the most common response in the actual situation is indeed responding passively. In the second phase of the study, the participants were asked to provide their overall impression of the candidate. The results confirmed the hypothesis that the more confrontation the participants predicted for themselves, the more negatively they viewed their target. So, how do we bridge this empathy gap? As the study revealed, it could be done by reflecting on the target situation in a more nuanced manner. Doing so also leads to more accurate forecasting. Researchers prompted the participants to think more deeply about the situation by providing them with details of the survivor's experience they'd previously overlooked. Results revealed when we are urged to step into the survivor's shoes and picture the situation with all its nuanced realities, we generate empathy towards the survivor's experience and choice of action. This makes us more likely to be accepting of passive behavior. That being said, passive responses are extremely unlikely to stop the harasser. What then can be done in order to reduce the instances of sexual harassment? Under such circumstances, an observer's role becomes crucial. Any of us might happen to encounter such a situation. An observer like you can intervene and make a real difference in putting a stop to the harassment. But is it easy for an observer to intervene? What goes on in the mind of someone witnessing sexual harassment? Well, you can learn about it in the next video. That's all for now.